There are some cars that just don't seem to sell. And that's a little bit of a shame, because there can be some real forgotten gems out there. And that's despite the manufacturer's best intentions, and despite those cars' own talents, people just don't seem to take much notice of them. They don't even realise maybe they exist. And that's a little bit of a shame because, well, sometimes it can be good because obviously there are some real second-hand bargains out there to be had. They make a good buy second-hand. But if no one's buying them in the first place, there won't be that many to choose from, and they'll just be left languishing in the showrooms. Now, I like Genesis, the brand, not the band. Although I do like the band, they're one of my favourites. I'm talking about Genesis as a car brand. I really like them. They've got some great models in the range. The problem is, however, their performance, especially in the UK market, is, shall we say, somewhat underwhelming. In 2024, they have sold in the hundreds, not thousands. And that's a real shame, I think, because I do believe they've got some great product out there. Which got me thinking, is the GV80, their flagship SUV, one of those hidden gems? Is this a car we should all have been buying instead of the ubiquitous BMW X5, Volvo XC90s and of course Audi Q7s? Well, there was only one way to find out, and that was to bring one to Scotland. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the Genesis GV80. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, before I get started on this week's review of the Genesis GV80, I know, you're sick and tired of hearing it, I get it, but I do need to ask, you know, it's just what keeps me going. The thing is, if you're not already a subscriber to the House of Cars channel, would you please consider becoming one? Once you've done that, press the bell button that's down below, because that's the way you get notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Of course, if you watch it and you enjoy it, which I hope you do, I mean, I've driven to Scotland for this, then of course give it a little thumbs up, and don't forget to leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars that I feature on the channel, such as the GV80 from Genesis, and of course on the House of Cars channel as a whole. So, there might be some of you out there thinking, hang on a second, this isn't a new car. In fact, in some respects, Brian, I don't understand why you're reviewing it, because Genesis have actually withdrawn this car from sale in the UK as a new model. In the way that you can't go and order the car brand new to your own spec. You can still buy a new GV80, but you have to buy from stock what's available. But it did get me thinking, why has it not succeeded? What is it about this car that made us not buy it in the first place, as I say, that made us go out there and buy BMW X5s and Audi Q7s and all the rest of it? Now, a couple of little things also to understand is, Genesis as a brand used to be a standalone brand, and they were trying to do this whole sort of thing where you maybe bought online, and you know they just had stores. In other words, they had a one in London, I think there was one in Edinburgh, and there was one somewhere else, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't a regular dealership that you could go into and buy the cars, you know, and build up a relationship with those dealers. And I think that's part and parcel of what's caused the issue in the UK. I think here we still prefer that traditional type of dealership model, and I'm a big fan of it, having worked in dealerships for nearly 30 years. You know, you build a relationship with your local dealer, because things will go wrong. They will do, they're inevitable, it's a car, it's a machine. Something will go wrong, and you want to know that you're being loved and looked after and all the rest of it. Now, that is one area where Genesis they did do very well. They had an incredible after-sales package, and you were assigned a personal assistant and all this, but I'm not sure we were maybe ready for it. But things have changed, because Genesis in the UK have been brought under the parent company, Hyundai Group, and they're all being managed within Hyundai. You're going to still have sort of like, you know, Genesis showrooms, there's still Genesis models, you know, and all the rest of it, but they're going to have traditional type of dealerships now and all the rest of it, just like you've been used to. And as I say, if you know what we're talking about in terms of Genesis, then you'll know that of course it's sort of the luxury brand of Hyundai, a bit like Lexus is to Toyota, and Lexus have done very, very well with this model. So hopefully, by doing that, Genesis will follow suit. Now, I am a big Genesis fan, as I say. Not just to Phil Collins and the boys, but actually of this brand. In fact, I actually drive a Genesis, a GV70 Electric, as my long-term test car on Auto EV. But I've never driven the GV80, and I was really curious, and I love my GV70, it's a great car. I was really curious to find out why we weren't buying this one. What's wrong with this car? Why did we not buy this? So I thought, well, what better way to give it a proper test than I was coming up to Scotland with the family for the October half term. Why don't I get myself a GV80, bring it on a big trip, and find out whether or not we really have missed a trick with this car. A trick in the tail. If you're a Genesis fan, as in the band, you'll get that. Anyway, let's crack on the review and find out, shall we? But before we start, let's just understand what the GV80 actually is. Well, like I said, it's the brand's flagship SUV, and it competes with the likes of the BMW X5, the Audi Q7 and the Mercedes-Benz GLE. There are just two engine options available, either a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol or a 3 litre 6-cylinder diesel. Both deliver drive to all four wheels via an 8-speed automatic transmission. There is an option of either 5, 6 or 7-seat configurations, and prices start from just over £60,000 depending on the specification chosen. So in theory this should be a winner. A large, luxuriously appointed SUV with a choice of petrol or diesel engines, seating for up to 7, well equipped to standard and styled by an ex-Bentley designer. It has all the right makings to be a success. So why hasn't it been? Well, let's stick it through a House of Cars road test review and find out. Right, let's kick off with how the car looks. And this is really important if you're going to establish a brand, a new brand. You've got to get distinction in the marketplace. You've got to stand out for the right reasons, of course. Now, interestingly enough, when my wife was driving her GV70 the other day, she was telling me that a little boy in a car park, she overheard him saying to his mum, "Mummy, that's the new Bentley SUV." So if you're going to be mistaken for something, being mistaken for a Bentley is no bad thing. I mean, it's a fairly decent compliment, I think. And it shouldn't really be a surprise because the head designer at Genesis, the man that heads up their design department, Luke Donkervolk, and the man who designed this car, Sang-Yup Lee, they're both ex-Bentley designers. So we shouldn't be shocked, should we? Of course, you get your big open crest grille here that's at the front, which is a signature across all of the Genesis range as well. So of course on the petrol, the combustion engine cars, this is all open. On the electric versions, it's all closed. I will talk about the electric versions a little bit later on. You get your flying sort of like winged badge here, but it of course doesn't have a B in the centre, just as Genesis. So again, you can understand why people might start to assume at a glance that's what it is. And it nestles in this lovely sort of like line that just dips in here. There's almost a little sculpted part of the bonnet that just dips into this nose cone area here that nestles the badge, and it has the same shape on the Genesis logo in the centre that the grille sort of is as well. The other signature Genesis thing is their twin lamps. Now you'll see that all round the car, and probably in the GV80, like the G80 saloon, it's at its most distinctive. Where you have a look round it, you can really see those twin lamps around the car, which is excellent. You get some tech hidden in there because obviously you get your camera, front-mounted camera that's hidden just up in there. There's the radar sensor down at the bottom for the radar guided cruise control, and then you get a nice bit of chrome along the side there with some aero bits going on there that obviously take airflow up and round the side of the car. So it's got a very distinctive looking front end, and as I say, it's very Genesis. It's laid its stand, its stall out for all intent to see. As I say, there's a lot of commonality with Bentley with this matrix style of grille at the front and the winged badge, but once you start to see the rest of the range and you understand that, as I say, that's what they're trying to achieve through the range, but each one stands apart, its own individual model, I think we're off to a good start with it. Right, it's a big car, okay? It's a big SUV, so as I say, it competes with BMW X5, Volvo XC90, Audi Q7, those type of cars, so it is physically large. It's larger than my GV70, which is more like the BMW X3, Audi Q5 style of car, okay? See what I was saying about the twin lamps at the front, how it's mirrored along the side there? You get the twin side strakes, well, side strakes, but they're just bits of trim here, but they've got the turn indicators in them as well. So that's the other, that flows all around the car. 22-inch wheels on the car, 22-inch alloy wheels on the car, which are fairly chunky big tyres as well on them. You know, the Michelin's on these, they're 265/40 R22s. And I will talk about ride quality and stuff when we're out driving it. A lot more chrome on the car. Now it's odd, isn't it? Because chrome, I think, seems to have taken a little bit of, it seems to be very much out of favour with a lot of people, especially for sustainability reasons. But Genesis are really focusing on it. All their models have a lot of chrome on them. So there you go. So you get the chrome flash down at the bottom there. The usual viewers will know that I like this, the fact that the door comes right underneath the sill. So although it's all dirty like it's been, you know, on my trip up to Scotland and stuff, you don't sort of like get your trousers marked as you're getting out of the car because the door wraps right under the sill. I like that. It's a good little trick that to do that. It's quite a cab back design, isn't it? Not so much cab forward, it leans sort of like all the way back, and it's got a big emphasis on space at the back here, because bear in mind this has got seating for up to 7. This particular car doesn't. This has got the seating for 6, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we go inside it. And then the window line that swoops up and then just swoops right up to the tail here and goes, you know, into that sort of like rear spoiler there. So yeah, it's a big, physically big car, very much a cab backward stance, a lot of use of chrome. They're really focusing on the luxury side of things rather than the sporting side of things. You know, there's no blacked out trim and things like that you get on other cars. It's very much luxurious look to the car. Is that a good thing though? Well, let's keep going and we'll find out later. You've almost got like a sort of cam tail here, you know, the way it sort of curves out again with this sort of like rear hatch area here at the back. And of course you get your twin lamps again down there, so you see that you've got those twin lights that have gone from the front down the side and then wrapped around the back. So I do like that theme. There's a couple of little bits at the back I do like as well. The fact that the boot lid release isn't underneath there, it's just a button on the rear wiper there, so you don't get your hands dirty. You know, if you're, again, the days we've had at the moment, it's October, you're not sticking your hands underneath there that's going to be covered in all the road grime and stuff. It's just a button on the rear wiper. That's quite cool. And you get this lovely sort of like full width, high level brake light at the back there as well. Again, chrome little bits there, and then chrome exhaust finishers because you get twin tailpipes on the car as well. Obviously there's a rear reversing camera there that's just tucked underneath that sort of like ridge there, and then of course you get parking sensors down at the bottom. So distinctive, and as I say, that's the good thing. That's obviously designed to make it stand apart in a market space where there's a lot of competition out there, as we've said, you know, and there's a lot of competition, you know, that people buy very popular cars, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Volvo. How are Genesis going to make a mark? Well, they start by making it really stand out in the marketplace. And as I say, maybe aping something like luxurious models from Bentley maybe isn't such a bad way to start off with that. But what do you think? Too much? Are you not a big fan of the chrome and the grills and all the rest of it? Would you prefer something a bit more subtle? Have you preferred something a bit more subtle? Have you bought the X5 or the XC90 or the Q7 instead of this? Did you look at this first, or did you not even know this existed? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now, boot space will depend on what seating configuration you go for your car. Now, if you go for this, which is the 6-seat or the 7-seat configuration, then the boot space you've got is 727 litres, which is fantastic, you know. That's a good amount of boot space. If you go for a 5-seat car, that only increases by 8 litres, okay? So there's not much to be lost, in fairness. And if you fold the rear bench down, then that goes up to 2,139 litres as a complete space in the inside. Again, if it's a 5-seat car, it's 2,152 litres, so there's not much of a difference, in fairness. But this is quite clever, and I do want to show this here. So let me just remove this parcel shelf. For the first thing that I love about this is this has got a, hang on, this one's got a bit of carpet in the back here that I just need to flip forward, okay? So the first thing is, you've got storage underneath the boot floor for your parcel shelf, which is something that I absolutely love. Now, the other day, whilst I've been up in Scotland, I've been helping my mum out, and she was getting rid of a pile of stuff out of her house, so we had all the seats down. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic what you could do. But this is the bit that I'm really quite interested in, because when you want the back seats up, when you need those rearmost seats up, if I fold that back down, where is it here? It's on this side here. Oh, my umbrella's about to get stuck there. They come up electrically. And therefore they fold electrically as well. That's excellent. And that folds there. So you've actually still got quite a decent bit of space behind you. You've probably got a couple of carry-ons there, or a buggy, or, you know, a couple of hold-alls, or whatever you're needing to carry if you've got 7 people in the back. Obviously you're not going to get a load of luggage for 7 there, but you can also put roof bars on the roof box and carry that. But that's okay. And that's it with the rear seats in place. So there's a decent amount of space back here if you're looking at a practicality side of things. Right, I suppose I have to lose my dignity again because it's a 7-seater. I hate reviewing 7-seaters because I've got to climb in the back of the bloody things. Right, hang on. Let me just see what we can do here. Right. Okay, oh, right, okay. So headroom's a bit tight and my legs are pushed right up. Oh, is that going to stop? He says. Oh, okay. Well, look, I could go a short distance like this. Now, I'm 5'8", so I think you really have to view it as a child seat back here, you know, in terms of if you really needed this sort of like the 7-seat carrying ability, or you're using you know, the sort of like, you know, the rearmost bench. We are talking of children only, really, because as I say, my head is now hitting the roof and my legs are pushed right up. On saying that, I've got a 3-point seat belt. I've got a cup holder there, and I can move. Oh, hang on, I can move the sort of like the backrest a little bit to give me some more recline. But that's in its most reclined position. So there, that is it. And as I say, my head is right against the roof there. So yeah, that's probably just going to be for kids only back here. But in fairness, I don't think there's much else out there. Maybe apart from things like the Kia EV9, you know, and dedicated proper big 7-seat cars, you know, such as proper MPVs, Mercedes-Benz V-Class. The Hyundai Santa Fe, in fairness, does do the 7-seat carrying very, very well. But, you know, in terms of BMW X5, you know, Audi Q7 and things like that, they're probably all much of a muchness. So yeah, it's kids only back here, I'm afraid. Right, I need to get out now. Take me almost out again here. Avert your eyes. That's the other thing. The only thing I will say as well is, with it being electrically, you have to wait on the electrics working. So if you're standing outside and it's raining, you're trying to get people into the rearmost bench. That's a bit of a downside. But there we go. That's what you've got. However, it's here where it really is at its best in this second row. Now, this is the 6-seat configuration. This is called the Luxury Plus. Okay, so this is what you get. And this is a really lovely, lovely place to be. My daughter, who is 10, adores the back of this car, as does my son, who's 26. They were both in it yesterday. And they were sat back here absolutely loving life, because it is very luxurious feeling, you know, for this style of car, if you go for this Luxury Plus 6-seat configuration. Because what you effectively have is 2 individual seats here. You don't have a bench across because you get this fixed console in place. And you can, you know, really change these seats around. You can slide them backwards and forwards. You can recline them. The only downside with reclining them is it doesn't pull that part up, you know, like it does in the front seat. So you can't lift this up like the backs of your legs up, but at least you can lie back a little bit, you know, and have a little snooze. You know, maybe if you've got a long journey ahead, you can tilt it back with the kids if you're driving at night. And that's superb. The other nice thing you get is these fixed screens here. Now, they're not fantastically brilliant in what they do. They effectively mirror the front screen, but you can transfer video to them. So, I mean, I'm not sure whether or not you need that, whether or not that'd be better just as an app, because it will get quite old hat quite quickly, I think, the technology in this. So maybe that'd been better just as an iPad holder. Might have been better. But my daughter was able to control the music from back here last night when we were coming back from Edinburgh. You know, she was putting her playlists up and things like that. And you can do that from here because you've got the same controller that you've got in the front here. So the rotary dial controller, you've got volume adjustment for either side as well. You can also turn the screens on and off. You've got a wireless charging pad down there. She was able to charge her mobile. You've got a open cubby box down there for her sweeties that were in there. And the really nice thing here is also as well, you've got cup holders here, which can cool things or keep them warm back here. That's brilliant. So there was a bottle of water back here the other day that we had for the dog, and she was able to keep it nicely chilled back here, which is really cool. And of course, you've also got your heating and ventilation controls for the back passenger compartment anyway. So you've also got heated seats and ventilated seats for either side, which is superb. And you can control airflow, temperature, fan speed. Plus as well, you've got power takeoff there. You know, USB A's down there, and another for a twin plug there for the 220 volt plug down in there. So it's not a 3-pin plug, but at least you have got some control there. The other thing you have is, I need to put the ignition on, but basically they've got rear blinds back here as well. So you can put the blinds up. So again, she was able to get it really nice and cosy on a drive up from London the other day, and a vanity mirror on the roof. So it feels properly luxurious, you know, in this row if you go for the 6-seat configuration. And I haven't even spoken about the actual amount of room that you have, which is plentiful. You know, there's good leg room, there's good foot room, there's good headroom, and this car's optioned up with a double sunroof in here as well. So, in terms of this bench, this area here, this is a really good space to have. And as I say, in terms of us travelling as a family of 4 yesterday, this was excellent. You know, 4 up in the car, the kids in back here, you know, had plenty to do. I'm saying kids, he's 26, but you know what I mean. You know, they'd plenty to do. You know, they could have moved their own seats to make themselves comfortable. If one was feeling a bit chilly, they could put the heated seat on. They had enough space for their water bottles. And if they really wanted to, as I say, there was sort of like, you know, sort of like control back here for entertainment as well. So I can't really complain at that. There's also a bit of storage there with the airline style mat pockets in the backs of the seats and door bins as well, which are handy for putting our little collapsible dog bowls in for when the dog's in the car. So yeah, this is a nice part of the car. This middle bench, the second row of seats, if you're in this 6-seat car, this is absolutely superb for the money that you pay for this. It does have a feeling of a real luxury car here. So this is good, I like this bit. Right. Up front, luxurious appointments continue with this front cabin that we have here, driver and front passenger. So you sit high up, it's a big SUV, big tall SUV, commanding view out right across the bonnet, good views down the flanks of the car as well, good over the shoulder visibility too, so you can't complain at all with regards to that. And in terms of the way the car feels with materials, yeah, all good. So you've got quilted leather on these seats. It's leatherette sort of like in other places, but you're not going to really know, in fairness. And it's very much, to say, if we talked about the kind of Bentley look on the outside, it's not dissimilar here, you know, in terms of inside. You know, this quilting leather, a little bit of chrome, and these knurled knobs around here, you know, for heat and ventilation. You know, so there is more of a kind of luxury feel to the car rather than a sporty feel to it. Which maybe is at odds with the sports utility vibe that most manufacturers do. So what have we got to talk about up here? Right, so you get the big screen here. I think it's like 14 point something inches across there. And what it's a bit far away. It is a touch screen, but it is a little bit of a stretch. But you do get this rotary controller, which is, you know, as I say, I find quite nice. It's a bit like BMW iDrive, obviously. You know, and you can knock it backwards and forwards that way, or you can turn it to do what you need to do. This will be very familiar to you if you've got either another Genesis or, you know, sort of like a Hyundai model, because it's it's used across there, and Kia as well, in fairness. I've got it in my GV70, which is nice, and of course you can, you know, zoom in and out, and of course you can go across to home and you can search and all sorts. Plus it has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so all of that's very, very good. Connected services by Genesis, and it's also got an augmented reality navigation system. That's all very well and good. Right, so that's that. I'm not going to go into it too much. You've got the usual digital instrumentation cluster here, which is a sort of three-dimensional side of it, although it doesn't look that much three-dimensional to me, but it's a nice, it's got a nice feel to it, a nice look to it. You know, it's very easy to read. You've got rev count on the right, speed on the left, fuel down in the left-hand corner there, temperature gauge there, and then, you know, sort of like your economy meter, if you like, down there. You can change the center of the dials. Where did I get it here? How did I get it up? You can oh, there it is. You can change the center of the dials to tell you different things. So you can have a digital speed readout. You can talk about, I'll talk about the safety systems. You can have your safety systems there, tire pressure monitoring. You can have trip meters and all sorts, you know, in there in terms of your navigation. So a digital, sort of like an arrow, for instance, if you're using a nav here. Obviously, it doesn't do it if you've got Apple. If you're using one of the navigation systems with either Apple CarPlay, so like Google Maps or Apple Maps or Waze or stuff, you've got to keep your eye on there. It's got a head-up display as well, which is very good and very handy. I do like that. The steering wheel looks like something from a 1970s Lincoln, but actually, in fairness, it does work quite well. I do quite like the wheel. Aesthetically, I mean, it's not the best. I've got a 3-spoke on the GV70, but this just 2-spoke here. But it's got a nice, you know, sort of like diameter to it. You know, it's got the right size of wheel, and there's a nice hold to it. It's not too thick, and your thumbs just nestle in there, and you can reach the paddles if you want to change gear yourself, and of course you get your indicator and wiper stalks at easy reach there, so that's good. And then there's just the right amount of buttons on it, so you've got favourites. Over here you can change the mode, in other words, you know, where your source is. You've got volume, track search, and then your phone up there, and then on this side it controls your configuration of the centre screen, takes off the lane keep assist if you don't want it on, and then obviously your cruise control buttons there. So just the right amount of buttons, they're all within easy reach of a thumb. So whilst, as I say, the design of it's not everyone's cup of tea, where everything is, functionality wise, it works. And then there's this screen here, which is your heating and ventilation controls, which again work really, really well. So you've got physical buttons along the top, which are shortcuts. So you want to go straight to map, brings it straight up, straight to your nav, brings it up, your favourites, whatever you've set as your favourite in there, hazards, radio, media, and then your setup. And then below that is your actual heating and ventilation. So temperature controls are these knurled knobs here that you turn, and then buttons at the side are automatic or off. But you can also then use this little screen in the centre here to adjust fan speed, direction flow, and your heated seat and ventilated seats there on the little screen there. So it's just the right amount of screen versus button ratio, I think. You know, it's just enough. It all works really, really well. And then behind that, you've got your wireless charging pad for your phone. Now, I can't get it to wirelessly charge my phone for some odd reason. I've got an iPhone 15 Pro Max thing, which does fit in there, but it doesn't even want to charge it. So I've then got to use a cable to charge it. Now, admittedly, it's not the end of the world. And then that as a cover, you can cover it up, so you don't have to see your phone in there. But it's USB-A's around the car. There's no USB-C ports in the car. So even though it feels a bit old hat, I don't know if that's just me, but that just feels a bit old-fashioned, USB-A's now. Anyway, that's what it is. So I don't know why it's not charging it, but it does do wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, in fairness. Right, 2 cup holders here, as you can see, plus storage bin in here. So I've got my wife's got her sunnies in here, I've got my sunnies in there, I've got parking discs, my wallet, I've got, you know, all sorts of things. If you need to put your travelling sweeties, they can go in there as well, so they're all in there. That's good. It's a nice armrest. And then you've got this little controller here that does the hill descent control, the parking camera. So you've got a parking camera all around as well, and you can activate the parking system from there, which is good. And then this is also your drive mode button, your terrain mode button. So if you push it, you get your terrain mode up here where you've got snow, mud and sand. Push it again and it goes into the drive mode, so eco, comfort and sport. We'll talk about those when we're out driving it. So that's where you control that from. So again, and then there's your rotary dial here for the transmission. So reverse, neutral and drive by turning it and pushing it for park, and then an auto button. So as I say, the right amount of physical controls in the car in terms of what it's actually used for and what you can actually use. It is a touch screen, but as I say, because it's far away, you do get this rotary dial there, and that works really well. So I do like that, so that's fine. Then you get things like your back button, your home button, menus, volume controls, this knurled volume control there for the radio, and tuning there, okay? Very, very well appointed, as you can see. So you've got ergo massage seats as well in the front, which means that after a while, coming up the M6 the other day, been driving for a while, it says, right, I'm going to put on the massage seat for you, and it just does this posture thing, which at first I found really irritating, but actually I started to really quite like it. So it just kind of kneads your back a little bit and just saves you squirming around your seat on a long drive. So I do quite like that. And the seats themselves are quite nice, and depending on the mode you're in, it will pull the bolsters in sport mode or open them up in comfort mode. You know, so there is a lot to like about it. And then the buttons down the side here on the door, you know, where you've got the mirror controls and the window switches and stuff like, and all the rest of it there. So, you know, it just feels nice. It's just nice. I like the cabin in the car. It's good. You know, there's just the right amount of kind of quilted leather and you know, leatherette. There's the right amount of armrest. You know, the position that you sit in is very nice. Good view out. That's easy to use. This is nice and clear. This is simple. I'm obviously doing something wrong with the wireless charging, but that's the only thing I can fault it on in that sense. And there's enough storage on it. The only thing I will say is this. Whilst that is good and this is good as well, it doesn't feel as modern and as how do I put this the right way? When you look at, say, the BMW controller, and obviously I had a BMW iX2 up until just recently, it felt much more, the graphics and things like that feel much more modern. If you look at Polestar, you know, the use of Google and things like that in it, you know, with obviously the Polestar 3, their big SUV and stuff like that, you know, and the way the fonts, everything feels a bit more, this feels like a sort of last generation. Yeah, does that make sense? It's good, it's all very good, you know, but it just feels a little bit last. It feels, as I say, you know, iPhone 16's out now, this feels a bit iPhone 14. That's the best way to describe it. Still really, really good. But when you put them side by side, you can go, oh yeah, that's a lot better, you know, the newer stuff. You know, BMW, Mercedes, maybe Audi needs, I mean, it's coming on to Audi, in fairness, because they've changed their models just recently, they've updated them. So that's just the only bit that makes me feel, it just feels a little bit behind where everyone else now is in terms of its technology. But it's hard to fault the cabin in terms of comfort, in terms of tech that it has in it, you know, as in it's got everything that you would expect in it, in terms of the functionality of everything, and also in terms of its fit and finish. Yes, there are little bits I could find fault with, just maybe underneath the steering columns, a bit of scratchy plastic. You know, again, just lower down the glove box and the door bins, but the door bins are lined, in fairness. You know, they've got sort of like a rubber along the bottom of them, and they do feel, so in terms of its premium feel, it is as good as, you know, pretty much everything else that's out there. That, yeah, you could maybe pick faults here and there, but you would be splitting hairs. But on the whole, this is a nice cabin, this is a nice place to be. So it's all shaping up to be quite a good car. Well, it was, until we get to here, which is where I think the car starts to fall apart a little bit. Because in the UK, there's only two engine choices with this car, which is either petrol or diesel, okay? But the petrol engine, which this car is a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit. No hybrid system, so it's just a 2.5 4-cylinder turbo. That's it. Now, it's not lacking in power. It's 304 PS, in fairness, and it's 422 Newton meters of torque. So that's not the issue with it. I will talk a bit more about it when we go out and drive the car, however. But other markets got a 3.5 litre V6 engine, petrol engine. This, we didn't get it. And I say there's no plug-in hybrid option or hybridization in the car either, which means that it really is a downside when it comes, if you're a company car driver, because it emits 229 grams per kilometre a CO2, which puts it in a really high tax bracket, so you'd be paying a fortune for it. And also as well, now it puts its power through an 8-speed automatic transmission, which again is okay, but again, it's not the easiest engine and transmission sort of like link up, if you like, to make the best of a car of this size. The other downside is economy. Now I'm getting roughly 25 miles to the gallon on average. Now I know it's a big 2-ton plus SUV, but even so, you know, 25 miles to the gallon on a steady run up the motorway the other day, it's not brilliant in that sense. That's why I say it would do so much better if it had a plug-in hybrid option, or maybe, and I haven't driven it in fairness, that's why I'm not commenting on it, the 3-litre diesel engine might be the better option if you're looking at one of these second-hand. But yeah, I think that's the first part where this starts to slightly fall apart. Right, let's get the car out on the road and see what we make of it. So in terms of you know, power figures, as I was saying earlier, 304 PS, 440 meters of torque, 0 to 60 a whisker under 7 seconds, I think it's 6.9 seconds, and it'll top out, we're permitted, about 147 miles an hour. So look, it's absolutely on the button when it comes to sort of like this size of SUV, and you know, this sort of this market space, if you like, you know, with its competition like the X5 and the GLE and the XC90 and those kind of cars. So it's fine with regards to that. It's the way it delivers it that I struggle with. Okay, now it's a 4-cylinder engine. Now I don't have a problem with a big car that's having a 4-cylinder engine when it's turbocharged, you know, and maybe has a little bit of hybrid running as well. Thank you very much, madam. But this doesn't. You know, there's no, you know, it is a straightforward 2.5 litre 4-cylinder turbo engine. That's it. Longitudinally mounted as well. It's not transverse, it's a longitudinally mounted engine, which I found quite interesting. Anyway, that's beside the point. And it just doesn't have the refinement of a 6-cylinder, you know? So, you know, when you do extend, and it doesn't obviously have, because it doesn't have any hybridization or electric drivetrain running, you know, there's no sort of like silent running, if you like, with the car either. This is it. This is what it's like, you know. And when you extend the, you know, when you extend the engine to sort of like say overtake something, you know, like I'm out in the back roads of southwest Scotland, near where I grew up. You know, in UK you get the odd tractor, the odd slow-moving driver, and things like that. You know, yesterday on the way up to Edinburgh, you know, we took one of my favourite roads up, the, you know, the Beef Tub Road, and you put your foot down, and it just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't sound particularly nice. It just doesn't have the refinement there. And the transmission's slightly dim-witted. It just takes a little bit of time for it to decide what it wants to do. You know, and it's an 8-speed box. Now, I've deliberately brought it down this road here for a couple of reasons. One of which, let me just turn this lane keep assist off, thank you very much. One of which is to do with that performance. You know, as I say, if you come out of a bend and you want to just sort of like get the power down, it just takes that little bit of while to decide, oh yeah, it's kick, oh yeah, kick down's what you want, right? Okay then, I'll put some accelerate. See, it's just not that instantaneous, and then when it does extend up through the revs to 4,000, it just doesn't sound that great. So that's my first issue with, you know, with the drivetrain as such. You can shift gear yourself if you want via these two paddles behind the steering wheel. So left one for down, right one for up. You know, and obviously it'll change gear manually if you like. And that's some way to alleviate it, but even then it just takes a little bit of time for it to decide what it's doing, and then sets itself up. As I say, it's just quite a coarse engine when you extend it. So that's the first issue that I have with it. It's not the lack of power. The power's there, the performance is there, it's just not particularly nice when you sort of like, as I say, you extend it that little bit. The second issue that I have with the car is the chassis, and this is quite a big thing, and that's the reason I've come down this road here. So its primary ride, when you're up on the motorway, is absolutely fine. In fact, in some respects, it's quite nice. There was 4 of us in the car yesterday coming back from Edinburgh, and on the motorway at night, you're driving along 70 odd miles an hour, it's just sitting there, it feels planted, it's fine, and it does everything. There's almost an element of even float with it, you know, you just get a little bit of float. It's when you come off the motorway and you start going round little back roads like this, or even through town and things like that, and it's its secondary ride, it's just poor. Now, it does have adaptive damping in the sense of it has a camera at the front that seems to scan the road ahead and adjust it accordingly with what it sees. Well, it needs to go to the opticians as far as I'm concerned, because it's not particularly good. You know, you hit little imperfections in the roads. You're constantly aware of what's on the road, constantly aware of it. Now that's fine in a sports car, but in a sort of like a big luxury SUV, I don't want to be reminded of the poor road surface. I really don't. I want to be cosseted from it. And that's the odd thing with this car. It sort of alludes to being luxurious with the way it looks and these lovely seats and the leather and all the rest of it, but then tries to be sporty in the way it drives, and it fails at being both. It really does. I'm sorry, I like Genesis, I really do. Our GV70 is a great car to drive, but this big one, it all falls apart a little bit for me. It's just not very good at being either. It doesn't have air suspension, and I think it drastically needs it. That's what it needs, because you are constantly reminded of what's going on underneath you in this car. It never settles down. It's constantly it's like a child that won't sit still at a table. It's constantly fidgeting. Oh, see here, down this bit of road here. This is why I'm down here, because I knew how bad this was. You should be isolated from all this in a car like this, and you're just not. It's constantly reminding you this is a poor road surface. And then you don't want to drive it fast because you don't want to drive it, you want to drive it as slowly as possible because it's transmitting all of that, imperfection into the cabin. It's a real disappointment, I think. It really is. And because it's then constantly doing that, because it's constantly moving and fidgeting around, you're constantly correcting it with the steering. So you're never really relaxed in the car. You're never really relaxed in the car. Does that make sense? You're constant, as you go into a bend and there's a little bit of imperfection in the surface, you get knocked offline a bit, so you overcorrect it, and you don't settle down as a driver. You're constantly aware of what's going on, and you're constantly trying to correct the car's errors. And it's a real shame, because this should be absolutely, when you look at the car and you see it and you sit in it and you think, oh, this is going to be blissful, it's going to be a real luxury car. It's not. There's just too much chatter going on underneath, and you just don't want to, get a hustle on. As I say, on the motorway it's fine. It will cruise along all day, and be relatively comfortable. But when you get it away from the motorway, around about town or on the back roads, even A roads that are, just that little bit less than perfect, this is what you have to put up with. And I'm sorry, but cars like the X5, the XC90, the Q7, they just deal with it an awful lot better than this Genesis. The GV70 deals with it better because it's a slightly shorter car and it's got I don't know whether the weight of the electric one we have just weighs it down a bit more, I don't know. But it doesn't feel as fidgety as this. In fact, my wife says the GV70 feels like a proper grown-up's car. She was disappointed with this. She said, I really thought this was going to be like a real waft machine. Everything would be just completely silent, you wouldn't hear anything, and you'd just have this comfortable drive. She said, it's not that. So, I'm sorry, but I really want to love this car, I really do. But I just can't when it's as poor in the chassis as this one is, and as unrefined a drivetrain as it has. Let me talk a couple of other things before I sign off on the performance and handling section. Its brakes, let's just try them out. Oh, it has good brakes. Oh yeah, it's got good brakes, I'll give you that. The nice big powerful anchors that slow it down. So I do like those, that's good. That's excellent, nice brakes. But as I say, there's no point talking about the steering, because whilst it's okay at low speed and you're manoeuvring around. I was parking in a car park in Edinburgh yesterday. When the parking camera, surround parking, and the relatively light steering at low speed and things like that, it made it nice and easy to do. As soon as the road opens up, it's a completely different scenario, because as I say, you're constantly making adjustments to it, and it doesn't really weight up. It does weight up, it's not overtly light at speed, so, and there isn't really a vagueness there. It does respond well, but it doesn't feel a real step change as you increase the speed, so that again is because you're, as I say, because it's quite light at speed, so it is manoeuvrable. When you're in that bend situation where you're making corrections, that really overcorrects and the car moves around just a bit too much. As I say, it's a real shame. I really want to love this car, I really do, but I'm struggling with it. The last thing to talk about is, and I alluded to it there in the technical section, I've averaged 25 to the gallon out of this car. That's not great, is it? That's not brilliant at all when you think about, okay, I appreciate it's a big petrol engine, heavy SUV, but it's just, well, in fact, let me just tell you what I've done since I left home. So where are we? So I've done 304 miles in it so far, at an average of 25.2 miles to the gallon. Such a shame. Such a shame. It needs to be better to compete with the other cars in this market space, and it just isn't. And I can understand why this car hasn't sold. Sorry. Okay, now like I said at the start, you can't order a new GV80 in the UK to your own spec now. You've got to choose one from stock. They're not bringing the car into UK. Genesis as a brand have had a little bit of, as I say, a bit of a shifty around. They're now under Hyundai Motor Group UK, or whatever the name of their parent company brand is in the UK. So they're not, their management and all the rest of it, they're all brought in under the same sort of like the same offices and stuff like that. There's no real difference when it comes to what the customers see, you know, other than the fact that they've taken away some models and there's going to be more showrooms available across the UK. So in terms of you as a customer, if you have a Genesis at the moment, you're really not going to see much of a difference, other than the fact that you might get a local dealer. Your local Hyundai dealership might be, you know, looking after Genesis now from now on. But in terms of models and parts and all the rest of it, you don't have anything to worry about, okay? However, they've discontinued the GV80 and the G70 saloon and station wagon, which means now that all you've got is the GV60 little compact SUV, which is electric only, the GV70s, which is the smaller SUV, which is still getting petrol or fully electric. That's the one I have, and the G80 saloon, which is petrol and electric as well. Okay, they say they may bring the cars back in the next generation, if they do hybrids in them, which I think they need to, and I still think there's a market here for this car, but just not the way that it sits at the moment in some respects. And I don't want to give away the ending of this review right now, but I think you can see where we're going with this. But let me talk about price at the moment. So if you were looking at buying a GV80 at the moment, the range starts at £60,645, so it's not cheap, okay, to start with. Now this particular car that I've got is the 2.5 litre 4-cylinder engine, and it is the 6-seat luxury plus model, and it has two options on it. It has the sunroof and the electronic limited slip differential, which takes the total cost of this car to £78,605 on the road. Now that is a lot of money, okay? 78 bags of stand is a huge amount of money for this car, but it does come pretty much with everything else you can hope for in terms of equipment levels and spec and all the rest of it. Okay, now I often talk about whole life costs. It's not just cost of buying the car, it's the whole life cost. You've got to think about running costs as well. And you do get a tremendous after sales package with Genesis, you really do. And 5-year warranty with the vehicles as well, obviously through Hyundai. And you get assigned a personal assistant to look after you, looks after you when it comes to servicing, and you get a Genesis as a courtesy car and all the rest of it. So all of that's superb, you can't knock that and all the rest of it. However, when we are talking about whole life costs, we've got to talk about depreciation. And that's one area where this car does fall apart, which, as I say, might give a little bit of clue to where we're going with this review. Now, I had a quick look this morning. You can pick up a car that's under a year old, that's got around 4,000 miles on the clock, for under £50,000. Now, again, obviously, there might be different specifications. You need to look at that in terms of spec for spec. But if you were looking for a second-hand one, you wouldn't be spending £50,000 to get a car that's under a year old with only a few thousand miles on the clock. That's where it starts to sort of make sense to me. But to give you an idea in terms of that depreciation, I looked at an equivalent BMW X5 petrol, albeit it is a hybrid, because if you go for a petrol X5, it's a hybrid, but that's the way it has to be. So if you look at the equivalent age BMW X5 with a similar mileage on it, you're needing to find well over £60,000 still. So it shows you the level of depreciation that this car does take. It does take an absolute hit on that. So in terms of as a used car, because you're still going to have at least 4 years warranty left on it, plus all the benefits that the first owner would have had with the car, that's sort of where this starts to make a little bit of sense, if you want a Genesis GV80. Now, I mentioned in that pricing section here the BMW X5, so let's kick off with competition and talk about the X5. So that is, I think, sort of like one of the main competitors for this car. And if you're looking at the X5, then naturally you're going to look at the rivals that it shares from Germany. Audi Q7, Mercedes-Benz GLE, and of course those cars all offer seating for up to 7 people as well. So in terms of practicality, they're all much of a muchness in that. You've also got to consider what I think is one of the best 7-seat SUVs out there, the Volvo XC90. Now it's going to go through a little bit of a refresh at the moment. They're changing it. You're also going to be able to get it as an electric, obviously, as well, the EX90, but the XC90 is an exceptionally good car. And of course, all of these cars that we're talking about, the Q7, the Mercedes, the BMW, and of course the Volvo, you can have as hybrids, which you can't get in the Genesis. So that's one advantage you have of those when it comes to the competition. There's other cars to discuss, you know, when it comes to the competition of the car. Very similar to Genesis would be something like Lexus, say, for instance, with the RX model. Now, Lexus, you know, they had a hard time when they first started, but they've established themselves really well, and they're seen, you know, as an equivalent now, you know, in terms of, you know, the BMWs, the Audis, the Mercedes, if not maybe even a little bit more luxurious in some respects. And of course, when it comes to reliability and after-sales care, that's where they're really king of. So the RX from Lexus is a consideration as well. And again, you can have the long wheelbase version of that with seating for up to 7 people as well. And of course, hybrid. Now, you're also maybe going to consider something like the Land Rover Discovery. Now, we forget about the Discovery sometimes, I think, because people are concentrating on Range Rover and they're concentrating on Defender, but remember the Discovery's there, and that was one of the original premium 7-seat SUVs that were around. In fact, something like the BMW X5 was brought out to compete with the Discovery. So it just shows you that car, don't forget about it. It's a good car. Maybe obviously in terms of reliability wise, Land Rover don't have the greatest of reputation when it comes to that. But of course, in terms of their go anywhere ability and in terms of practicality, then of course Land Rover is a car that you've got to consider when it comes to those as well. And believe it or not, you're going to think of maybe something as well as maybe the new Toyota Land Cruiser. Now, it's not as luxurious. You know, of course, if you're looking for luxury, then you're thinking of Lexus. But if you're thinking of, you know, space, reliability, residuals, the new Toyota Land Cruiser that's coming along offers seating for up to 7 with a rugged utilitarian sort of like a car that you know, like go anywhere ability and the reliability that you expect from a Toyota. Not cheap, it's well over £70,000 in terms of its starting price, but it's a car to consider in this market space as well, albeit maybe not with that sort of premium badge attached to it, but certainly worth considering if it's the space you're after. I like Genesis as a brand. I like what they have to offer. I like a lot of their products because they offer a refined and efficient electrified drivetrain. And I think that's good because it stands them apart in the marketplace. And the GV80 stands apart as well in its marketplace. Unfortunately, maybe with not so many positive reasons going for it. Now, it's a good looking car, there's no doubt about it. I think it's a really good looking car and I love its beautifully appointed cabin. But as soon as you get it out on the open road, it's where it all starts to fall apart for me. It has an unrefined drivetrain, it has a chassis that lacks composure, two areas where the competition, some very serious competition, excel at. Then there's the high running cost to take into account because there's no electrified drivetrain on offer here, not even a hybrid. And of course there's depreciation, which is pretty serious. So therefore, in terms of its actual whole life costs, not just private buyers but also company car users, I've got a real negative before they've even started on this. And it's a real shame because I think the intention here was to create a really great car. But I dare suggest maybe a lack of understanding from the manufacturer of what the marketplace actually wanted and therefore people what were actually buying has meant they've misunderstood it completely. And therefore it has no doubt in my mind that the GV80 is no surprise that it no longer features in the UK price list for Genesis Motors. If you must have an SUV with a Genesis badge on it, then mark my words, the GV70 is the one to have. And the GV80, I don't think, will be missed by many. Thank you for watching another new car review on House of Cars. Please make sure that you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel. Then once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below because that's the way you get notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's video, and I hope you have, then give it a wee thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you have a GV80? Why did you buy it? Do you disagree with me completely? Please let me know. I don't mind. You know, I'm not going to get offended if you think I'm talking out my backside, so please do tell me down below why you bought it. Why did you choose it over, say, a BMW X5 or a Mercedes GLE or a Volvo XC90 or Audi Q7? Did you not buy one? What made you not decide on it? Was there another reason that I haven't mentioned why you didn't go for it in the first place? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, if you're a fan of social media, then I'm on the Instagram at House of Cars 1973, so please by all means give me a follow there as well, because that certainly helps the channel. And remember, whether or not it is a large car or it's a small car, whether it's a new car or an old car, whether it's a slow car or it's a fast car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thank you for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.